Hi everyone, my name is Shauna, in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. Today is a new reading vlog. The theme for this reading vlog is hyped books. So the 3 books that I'll be reading for this vlog are all ones that are extremely hyped, like you'll go onto BookTok and BookTube and see these books talked about nonstop. Before I get further into this video, I want to say, I'm so sorry if my voice starts off in this video sounding really rough. I went to SugoiShawn at the end of March. Yeah, end of March, like the 29th through the 31st. I got back from SugoiShawn. I had only like 36 hours of like uneventfulness before my cat passed away. My cat being Luna. I'll include a little picture of her there. So like my immune system was down from grief and I got really sick and I am still recovering, so yeah. My cold was like a cold that morphed into a sinus infection and ear infection. Plus I have chronic illnesses, so whenever I get sick, my chronic illness symptoms get worse. So like, it's been a lot, you know. I'm trying to recover. The fact that I am sitting here tonight and able to record at least a little bit of footage shows a lot about my improvement, because I wouldn't have been able to do this 3 days ago. So the first book for this reading vlog is one that I wasn't initially planning to do for this reading vlog. However, my friends Danny and Paula, who are both Pottergrammers and they've been reading a lot of books, they have their own like Fable like read-along book group for this series, and so I decided to join. I will include a link down in the description below if you want to join along for this like readathon of the whole series. Obviously, as of filming this, we're currently on the first book, but by the time that I get this video uploaded, it's going to be way more in the future and we're going to be a lot farther in the series. So keep that in mind. I don't know which place we'll be at in our read-along when this video gets uploaded. But anyways, the book that I'm reading because they're read-along is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. So I was really hesitant to read any more Sarah J. Maas books because A Court of Thorns and Roses didn't work for me and I found it problematic, and when I spoke out against how much I did not like it and how many problematic elements there were to the book, Sarah J. Maas fans have been hounding me and have not given me a day of peace. So I was like, this is leaving a sour taste in my mouth and I don't know if I want to give Sarah J. Maas another chance. But I currently own 4 of her books, including this one that I hadn't read yet. So I thought, why not join this read along, and maybe my relationship with Sarah J. Maas books can change by having a good experience with Sarah J. Maas fans. And so far, this experience of reading along with all of them has been really great. I'm gonna read off the back of the book really quickly. 2 men love her, the whole land fears her, only she can save them all. In a world without magic, an assassin is summoned to the castle. She comes not to kill the vicious king who rules from his throne of glass, but to win her freedom. If she defeats 23 killers, thieves, and warriors in a competition, she will be released from prison to serve as the king's champion. Her name is... These names are really hard to pronounce. I'm gonna try and use the pronunciation guide. Celaena Sardothien. Celaena Sardothien, there we go. The crown prince will provoke her, the captain of the guard will protect her, and a princess from a faraway land will befriend her. But something evil dwells in the castle, and it's there to kill. When her competitors start dying one by one, Celaena's... Is that how I said her name? Yes. When her competitors start dying one by one, Celaena's fight for freedom becomes a fight for survival and a desperate quest to root out the evil before it destroys her world. So I love the competition aspect. I always love a good competition, especially a good deadly competition in books. So that part of the book is possibly one of my favorite parts of the book. I love the crown prince and I love the captain of the guard. If I say their names, I have to like look up how to pronounce them. Okay. Kale, which I've been reading his name as Cole. His name is Kale. And Durian. Yeah, I love them. I'm definitely team Kale in terms of like which one's better and which one's like best for Celaena. This book is surprisingly fast-paced. I say surprisingly because ACOTAR was really boring and slow to me, so the change of pace with this one is really good. It's super fast-paced, there's tons of action, there's tons of like bantering and flirting between the guys and Celaena, which I'm really liking. So I'm really surprised that I'm liking this one as much as I am and that I'm invested in this as much as I am. I have so many predictions for this series and for what's going to be happening in the rest of this book. Like, I have a prediction that Knox is going to play a bigger part. Like, initially I was like, oh, he's going to be a third love interest, but then I was like, maybe he's like the monster that's killing people. I won't elaborate more on that because spoilers. And my biggest prediction that I'm like pretty confident will be correct is that Celaena is Fae. I mean, just look at that. Doesn't she look like Fae? Anyways, I won't tell you the results of my predictions because I don't want to spoil this book for anyone. This book isn't without flaws though. There's like three flaws. So I said I like Kale and Dorian, but every once in a while they say something like just random that makes me get the ick. Like, let me see if I can find one. Like, here's the most recent one. There's like more back here, but the things like border on feeling like misogynistic, and that's why it gives me the ick. So Dorian is like, I feel weird saying Dorian. I pronounced his name Dorian while reading this book. Anyways, Dorian is like talking about puppies and like breeding puppies that they have at the castle. And he says, I'm gonna cuss, but it means female dogs, so it's okay. He says, one of my bitches gave birth to a litter of mongrels. Before they were too young to tell, but now, well, I'd hope for purebreds. And Celaena says, are we speaking of dogs or of women? And he says, which would you prefer? He gave her an impish grin. Like, it's things like that like the comment technically could be harmless, but it feels like borderline misogynistic. Like, he should have just said like dogs, obviously. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's given weird vibes, and Kale and Dorian both have moments like that. I feel really weird saying Kale, and the reason why is because I thought there was a character named like Kale later in the series, or in another Sarah J Maas series. Anyways, so that's a bit of an issue, but I still do like the two boys besides that. Another issue is there's this character who I really like, but there's a slight problem I'm noticing with her character, Nehemia. Sorry that I'm using the like pronunciation guide so much. These character names are so hard to pronounce. So Nehemia, I really like her, and I was surprised by her character because ACOTAR has like no diversity, at least the first book. I've only read the first book in that series, and I'm just like, we have diversity in Nehemia. But sometimes some of the descriptions about her feel like cultural stereotypes, and like the way that she's described when she's dressed, when they first meet her, and just certain things about her, I'm like, I feel like she could be described to be less of a cultural stereotype. That's what I will say. And my biggest issue with this book, and the reason why this book probably won't be 5 stars, right now I'm predicting this book will be 4 stars, but the reason why this book probably won't be 5 stars, Celaena gets on my nerves. She pisses me off so much. I don't know if this is going to be a trend, if I'm going to hate like all of Sarah's main characters in her books, but I cannot stand Feyre, and I cannot stand Celaena. She's just very cocky and annoying and gets on my nerves. And like, I guess I like Celaena slightly more than Feyre, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Feyre was like pathetic and not super powerful for like a lot of the book. So I feel like Celaena has a little more like, go, woman power. But I'm also like, I cannot stand her. She gets on my nerves so much, and if there was a different main character, this would easily be a new favorite book. But because I can't stand her, I feel like this book isn't going to be a 5-star read for me. But I'm hoping that things will change and that she'll like have a good redemption arc, like character development. Oh, I didn't even show you how much I'm at. I'm at like 58-ish% of the book so far. I've read this much so far. I've decided that I'm going to do 2 reading updates per book for my reading vlogs because I ramble a lot. My raw footage for just talking for my first update for Throne of Glass is already over 11 minutes long. I'll obviously cut it down, but like, if I were to update you every night, or if I were to update you every 50 or 100 pages, this video would be like 3 hours long, and we're not going to do that. So it's going to be 2 updates for books. So that is basically my thoughts on the first half-ish of Throne of Glass. I think that it's a really great book. It has some flaws, obviously, but I still think that it's really fun, it's really interesting, and for once, a comparison to The Hunger Games lives up to the comparison in a very positive way, because sometimes I feel like books get compared to The Hunger Games and like it's very much either not like The Hunger Games or it's very much like a copy of The Hunger Games. But with this one, I'm like, this is a perfect description. Fans of Game of Thrones and The Hunger Games will love it. There's like the deadly competition and the love triangle, but written in a really unique and creative way like it was in The Hunger Games. And then with Game of Thrones, there's a lot of violence and fantasy elements. I haven't read Game of Thrones. I've seen like 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, so I'm not the best at saying whether this is like exactly like Game of Thrones, but I think that that's a pretty accurate way to describe this book for Game of Thrones and Hunger Games fans. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this one, and I am gonna go read some more of this, and hopefully it won't take me too long to read the second half of this. Although, I say that, my first midterm for this term is next week, and then 3 weeks later is my next midterm, so college is fun, y'all. College, like, mentally drains me a lot, but the way I have been, like, managing getting through college is that I read at least a minimum of 50 pages a day, so, like, I purposely devote a good chunk of each day to reading so that I at least have a little bit of joy I can bring in every day, since I love reading and it brings me joy. Anyways, I need to stop rambling. I'm gonna go read some more. I'll see all of you when I finish Throne of Glass. So I finished Throne of Glass, and it's time for me to give my second update on Throne of Glass, but I do want to apologize really quickly for how I look. I've been having like low self-esteem and really bad body image issues, and like I don't know if I legitimately look as bad as I feel like I look. But yeah, sorry if I apologize for how I look a lot. My self-esteem is not great. Anyways, enough of that. I just want to like apologize for my appearance because I feel like I look like absolute garbage at the moment. So I finished Throne of Glass. I have it right here. And I really enjoyed this one. It did end up being a 4-star read like I thought it would. Gosh, let me just open up to the character pronunciation guide right now so that I don't butcher these characters' names, because I have a lot of thoughts, but I need to like keep looking down at the guide to make sure I'm pronouncing the names right. So when I updated last, I found that Selena was really annoying. Here's the thing, by the end of the book, I found her less annoying, but I found that she was like bland by the end of the book. Like my annoyance for her disappeared, and I just felt like she was bland and just a stereotypical like YA protagonist, if that makes any sense. So she's a huge reason why I'm not giving this book 5 stars. My other reason for not giving this book 5 stars actually didn't show up until like the last 100 pages. I guess this is a little spoiler, but I feel like most people know about this, and that has to do with like the Fae involvement in this series. I feel like most people know that Fae are involved in this series. I just don't think everyone like knows the details of the Fae being involved in the series. Heck, I don't. I had like seen some videos saying that the Fae get more heavily involved in the later books, but I like had no clue what that exactly like entailed. But yeah, some Fae stuff happened in the last 100 pages. The thing that I'm discovering about Fae is that a lot of Fae have this like Alice in Wonderland type feel to it, where there feels like there's less like structure to what they do. It's sort of random, anything can happen. And I am not a huge fan of that anymore. So luckily the Fae involvement in this book wasn't super heavy, because when the Fae were involved, I was like, what's happening? And I had to read that chapter over and over and over, at least like 3 times before I understood what was happening. Because I was like, I am so utterly confused. And yeah, I had to read it over and over to understand the Fae part. So I'm a little worried to know that there's going to be more Fae stuff in the later books. But hopefully Sarah J. Maas has more of like a structure to her Fae and how it works, and hopefully it just isn't explained in this book yet, because I don't know, I just feel like I get pulled out of books so quickly when the Fae are like so random, or when anything has that like Alice in Wonderland type feel to it. I'm not like marking down points for this, but like I did still feel like Nehemia had somewhat of like cultural stereotypes to her, like racial stereotypes. I'm not going to address that in too much specific until I finish the series. If I finish the series, there's a chance I could DNF the series in the middle. But basically, I was looking it up, and I think it's interesting to look up if you have finished the series. Unfortunately, I like spoiled myself when I was looking it up, but I was like, I'm curious if anyone else is like feeling like something's off about this. And I found a really good rundown of that, but I had to quit reading that rundown like halfway through, so I'm not gonna like link it here or anything. I had to quit reading that rundown of like why the representation with Nehemia was like somewhat problematic, because it spoiled like 2 massive plot points with Nehemia, and I was like, no way, I love her, I don't want this spoiled for me, I'm quitting reading this, and I'll finish reading the article after I finish the series, and then I'll give all of you an update with the article. So I enjoyed the rest of the book. I found that it's really fast-paced and interesting. Now I did notice in the second half it did like slow down in some parts because it wanted to like develop the romance further and the love triangle. I completely understand that. I think I prefer action in my fantasy books as opposed to like heavy romance, but I didn't actually mind when the pace slowed too much. Like, I was noticing that it was slowing, but I was like, it's fine. It's part of the journey. I really enjoyed reading this book along with a reading group and discussing it. I don't know if I would have enjoyed this book as much as I did if I hadn't read it with a reading group and discussed it chapter by chapter. I did find that a lot of the plot twists were predictable, but I found that like I wasn't too upset because I found that for like each plot twist I had like 2 theories. Like for one of the main like villains, I had like 2 theories on who it could be. There was like 2 different people that I had in mind, and one of my guesses was correct, so it was like a little bit predictable but also a little bit not. But I was like super invested, like I wonder if these side characters are gonna play this like huge role and be a plot twist and be the villain. What else do I have to say about this book? Oh, so I'm definitely still team Kale. It still feels wrong to call him Kale. Like, for some reason I want to say Cole or Koal. No, not Koal. What the heck? I still want to say Cole for his name. I'm still team Kale. He is my favorite character in this book. So my favorite characters would be Kale, Durian. Wait, is that how I say his name? Durian, yes. So my favorite characters are Kale, Durian, and Nehemia. I feel like I'm second guessing every single pronunciation of the characters' names because like I read his name Durian, I read his name as Dorian for the whole book. But yeah, those are my 3 favorite characters. I love them all, and I'm gonna be so upset if anything happens to either of those 3, although I know one thing that is not good that happens to one of them later in the series. I don't want to spend too long like praising Sarah J Maas because I know she has some problems, but I do want to say one thing that I find that is really unique about her series that I've noticed that there's somewhat of a trend of is that the love interest will change a lot of the time. So the love interest in the first book isn't necessarily going to be the final love interest. Like, the characters go through a lot and experience a lot and don't always end up with the person that they start off with. So I find that part really interesting because it makes the romance in a series so much more complex and interesting, and it's not like a typical love triangle in the sense that it's like, oh, who she's gonna choose, but it's like a character could be her partner for like a while and then it will switch, and I find that to be really interesting. I personally think that part was done better in Throne of Glass. In ACOTAR, I feel like most people know it was about the love in ACOTAR, so I'm sorry if I spoil this for the few people who don't know about it, but like in ACOTAR, the guy that she's with in the first book is like complete trash and does terrible things to her, and so it's very obvious that the love interest is going to change. But in this one, I think the love interest is changing, but both love interests are really great guys, and it's both believable that she could fall in love with either of them. So I love that. I love that so much. There's so many times where I read a love triangle or anything like that and I'm like, immediately, this is going to be the guy that she's going to end up with in the long run. Like The Hunger Games, for example, or the Match trilogy, or can my brain think of more love triangles at the moment? I'm thinking of a series too that's like partially complete that I'm like, it's very obvious from the start who the true like forever partner for this person is going to be, and the author was like, oh, mysterious love triangle, but I'm like, as much as I am rooting for the guy who is not going to end up with her, it's very clear who she's going to end up with. But Sarah J Maas isn't doing that with Throne of Glass, which I really appreciate and admire. Yeah, I feel like I covered most of my thoughts on this book. As I said, I was reading this with a book group, and so I was like going into Fable after I read every chapter and like discussing it. So I have a lot of thoughts on each chapter individually, but I think I summarized my big thoughts overall. If you would like to join the Throne of Glass like read along, I will include a link to the Fable group down in the description below. But as I said earlier in this video, it may not be that we're still in the first book when this video gets uploaded because I still have 2 more books to read and film for this vlog. I'm not sure which books they will be at the moment. There's a few that I'm eyeing, but it's just gonna have to be like whatever I'm in the mood for, because unfortunately I'm a mood reader, which means I can plan out my reading vlogs loosely, but I can't do a TBR or else I will get in a slump. So I don't even want to admit how long it's been since the first book that I read for this vlog. I will say that my book club has now read the entirety of Throne of Glass. So, you're still welcome to join the book club, we're just no longer reading Throne of Glass. As of when I'm recording this right now, which this video will probably go up like way after this, my book club is doing the first 2 books in the Fourth Wing series, which I'm not taking a part of. Just the time frame for that was like aiming to read that before the 3rd book came out, and I was like, there's no way I can read those 2 books plus other books I want in that time frame. And also, like, I know the author's problematic and I don't own the books already, so I was like, just gonna like skip out on that read. But I'm gonna join the next one, Crescent City. So I am filming this on New Year's Eve, and on New Year's Day I will be starting the next book for this vlog. So this vlog is Hyped Books. So I looked at my shelf. I was considering a bunch of different titles. I was considering After by Anna Todd because I have that one, but I was like, I want to start my year off good. And personally, I've heard mostly negative things about After. What are some other ones I was continuing? I thought about They Both Die at the End, but I wanted to start on a happier note. I thought about Bride by Ali Hazelwood, but I have heard really mixed things on that. I know there was like one more that I was considering. Oh, I was considering An Ember in the Ashes. But my brain kept coming back to this one book, and I thought maybe this is the sign that this should be my first book of 2025. So this book is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a book I bought purely because of the hype. I didn't know anything about this book before buying it. I know there's some sort of romance in here, I believe with some brothers. I think this has something to do with like some sort of riddle or adventure to see who gets an inheritance. I don't entirely know. Let me read the back though. Secret passages, elaborate riddles, billions at stake. Avery Grams has a plan for a better future, survive high school, win a scholarship, and get out. But her luck changes in an instant when billionaire Tobias Hawthorne dies and leaves her virtually his entire fortune. Only catch, Avery must move into his sprawling mansion full of secret passages, riddles, and codes. Unfortunately for Avery, Hawthorne House is also occupied with a family that was just disinherited. This includes the 4 Hawthorne grandsons, dangerous, magnetic boys who grew up with every expectation that one day they would inherit billions. Heir apparent, Grayson is convinced that Avery is a con woman and he's determined to take her down, but his brother Jameson views her as the grandfather's last hurrah, a twisted riddle, a puzzle to be solved. Caught in a world of wealth and privilege with danger on every turn, Avery will have to play the game herself just to survive. Okay, so it's not entirely what I thought, but I think the love interests are Grayson and Jameson, or Jameson. I know which one most people root for, so I already know that, and fortunately with me, most of the time when there's love triangles, I always root for the losing one of the love triangle. It's a problem. I can't think of any love triangle where I rooted for the right person from the start. Yeah, I can't think of any. I really can't. Anyways, I'll be able to give more of a succinct, I feel like that's not the right word. I will be able to give more of my own personal interpretation of what this book is about after I get into this book. So I am going to find a sticky note somewhere. I think they're all downstairs right now. And I'm gonna mark the halfway point. I'll just write, film the next clip here, and after I get to the halfway point, I will give all of you an update. Oh my gosh, wait. These chapters look short. Glory, hallelujah. Seriously, I love short chapters so much. They're so much better than long chapters. I will read a short chapter book 2 times faster, if not 3 times faster than a long chapter book. And I enjoy short chapters a lot more. So I'm very excited that there's short chapters in here. This is a series and I'm hoping that I'll like this one enough to move on with the rest of the series. I believe there's like, I want to say 4 books in this series right now. I know there's like the trilogy, but there's also a book called like Hawthorne Brothers, so I think there's 4 books. Could be wrong though, so sorry if I was wrong in my information on that. But yeah, hopefully with vlogs this year, I'll be able to like crack them out better and not have them spread out so much, because it is a crime that I started Throne of Glass so long ago and I'm only now starting the 2nd of 3 books for this vlog. Ignore my pink face, I had a reaction to something that I put on my face last night, so this is just what it is today. It's looking a little better than it was earlier. Anyways, all of you know why I'm here for this next clip. I am now halfway through The Inheritance Games. I don't know if my cat just interrupted me, but she just like zoomed and it her like telling me I'm about to start zooming thing. So honestly, if I wasn't so tired all the time, I would already be done with this book. Not because it's an amazing book, but because the pacing is just making me fly through this book. I think it's a combination of quick pacing and short chapters. I love me a good short chapter, as you know, and these chapters have proven to be very short. So halfway is 45 chapters through this book. I don't know how I feel about this book right now, And I'm a little torn, and I'm hoping that I get a more definitive, like, whether I like this book or not by the time that I finish the book, because sometimes I feel like I hate it, sometimes I feel like I love it, and there's no in between. So the thing for me that I find so fascinating and interesting about this book is all the puzzles that they have to solve and the mysteries that they have to solve, and the creative way that the house was designed. The house seems like a dream, and it's really cool to read about the house. The thing that I'm not as into is the characters. So my favorite character is probably Oren right now, the literal security guard for Avery. Tells you a lot about what I think of these characters if this like random side character who's the security guard is my favorite character. Oh my gosh, my cat's making so much noise. So I understand that everyone's like Team Jameson or Team Grayson and are like arguing back and forth about who Avery should end up with. The thing is, I don't find Jameson or Grayson as appealing as everyone else does. I don't find them to be really interesting or fascinating. I find Grayson to be a jerk. I find Jameson to be a little more charming, but I also think Jameson has enough problems that I'm like, I don't know if he should really be in a relationship right now. Now, if I were forced to choose between those two, I would choose Jameson because I really don't like Grayson. But knowing me, I always end up choosing the wrong person in love triangle, so watch Avery end up with Grayson by the end of the series. I don't find Avery to be that interesting of a main character. I find her pretty standard and basic. She's pretty much just like generic main character is sort of the vibes I get from her. And a lot of this love triangle stuff is feeling like really forced in there, and I'm like, I don't care. Just solve the mysteries, have more puzzles in there, and I'll be entertained. I don't need this love triangle. Also, the romance that I actually am rooting for, that I like best, is Nash and Libby, which I hope that they don't end up being a couple if Avery ends up with one of the boys, which it seems like she will, because if that does happen, I don't want two sisters dating two brothers from the same family. I don't like that. Also, it's worth noting, Grayson has graduated high school. It appears that he's had a gap year already based on what I read tonight. So he's like an adult. He's like through a gap year, you know? And meanwhile, Avery is a high school junior. So the age gap is legal because it's 17 and 19, but just because something's legal doesn't make it right. And I hate age gaps between 17 and 19-year-olds in books, especially when it comes to something like the Inheritance Games, where it's a realistic fiction in the sense that like it's kids going to high school and some in college. So it's not like it's a fantasy world where it's a little different, so I'm a little iffy about that. There are some mysteries that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they resolve, and I hope that they get resolved in this book because I don't know as of right now whether I want to continue with this series or not. So that's honestly my only thoughts on the Inheritance Game so far. I have really mixed feelings on it, as is probably obvious. So I feel like there's a lot of positive things I could say about it, but there's also a lot of negative things I could say about it. That makes it hard to figure out where I would fall in like the rating. I feel like 3 stars is where I'm currently falling, but it could easily drop down to a 2-star or easily raise higher to a 4-star. So we just have to wait and see. I have the second half of the book here, which is gonna be like, I don't know, I can't math right now. It's gonna be sort of like 190-ish pages or less until I finish the book. Honestly, I just wish I wasn't so tired all the time, because then I could do so much more than I want to do each day, because I want to read more each day, and instead I'm just so tired that I'm sleeping most of the day. So I'm gonna go and try and read more of the Inheritance Games. I'm hoping to read a bit more. I set myself a goal of reading a minimum of 50 pages every day, so I set myself a goal every day of 50 pages so that I am forced to not let my tiredness dictate every single thing I do in my day. So I found like things where I feel productive, and then I make sure I do some productive things each day. And sometimes that is just 50 pages of a book a day, which is what I'm doing with the Inheritance Games. I mean, the first day I read like 90 pages, but we'll see how much I can get through tonight before I get too tired that I have to stop. Thank God for sticky notes, because someone, not naming names, may have forgot that they were filming a reading vlog for the Inheritance Games. But we're okay. No more reaction on my face. Got my proper like acne lotion thing, and it's not the one that I wasn't supposed to be using on my whole face. My face is definitely like uber dry right now, but it's otherwise normal colored. So okay, so I finished the Inheritance Games, and I'm a little torn on whether I should continue with this series or not. I think I am going to if the Kindle version is cheap and or if I find the second version used, but I don't know if I'd necessarily go out of my way to get the second book brand new. That pretty much summarizes my thoughts on it, but let's talk about it in more detail. So for the second half of the book, I really did not care for it anymore. Now listen, there's still some really good things that I like about this book. I loved the pacing. I think the pacing is my favorite thing about this book. I loved the mystery in it unfolding, although the plot twist at the end of the book was the most predictable thing I've ever read. So it was a little shocking that an author who can write such complicated and surprising puzzles for the characters to solve ended up going with the easiest plot twist to solve. That was weird. And I loved the house. So the house is one of my favorite parts of this. I still don't care for the characters. And by the end, I didn't really care about solving the puzzles anymore. I just didn't care. And so because of that, this book really falls into the okay range. These characters really just don't matter to me at all. Every once in a while, there's a moment with like Nash or with Xander where I'm like, oh, they're cool. But then the next page, I won't care because they just have cool moments. They aren't cool characters. I still never cared for Avery, Jameson, or Grayson. Just none of them really caught my attention. And I feel like Jameson and Grayson are both two characters who should not end up with Avery because I don't think that either of them are in a state where they can be with Avery. Jameson did some things in here that I was like, you've lost your chance with Avery. Grayson is still 19. I still have an issue with that. I also feel like Grayson has lots of stuff he needs to work through, and I also feel like Grayson is sort of taking the smart move with, I don't want a girl to get in the way of me and my brother's relationship, is what I'll say. I don't want to elaborate on that more because it'd be huge spoilers. So I would be interested to continue this series and to see the pacing and to get more of that pacing and more of the house and more of the mysteries, but I just need better characters. And you know, based on the way this ended, there might be a character that is interesting in like the second and third book and fourth book. But I think I'm going to give book 2 a chance, and if I'm feeling the same way about book 2, I'm just going to quit the series. I do have a prediction for the rest of the series. My prediction is that the little second puzzle that starts at the end of the book, my prediction is that Xander won't be the first one to solve that, and because of that, he's going to enter in his villain era. And then things are going to get a little chaotic. That's my prediction. Who knows if I'll be right or not? Who knows if I will even continue with the series enough to find that out? My prediction about a certain character was right. What was revealed at the end of the book. But yeah, so I would give this one 3 out of 5 stars, but it is more in the okay range as opposed to the I liked it range. 3 stars also in terms of if I'm talking about whether I recommend a book to other people or not. 3 stars is very much read it to get your own opinion, but I'm not going to like push you to read the book anytime soon. So I think it's just an okay read. I think it is very underwhelming compared to the hype that it gets, and that's the issue I have with a lot of hyped books, is that the hype is so high, like it's up here, and then you read them and they're either medium good or just flat out terrible. So I feel like this one is definitely one where it was overhyped to a huge extreme, so it felt really underwhelming. So yeah, that was my thoughts on The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. It's a very quick read, so I mean if you're looking for a quick read and you just want to read like a quick fluffy read that you don't have to think much about, then this is definitely one that you could try. So I am gonna try my very hardest to film the third book in this reading vlog within the next couple of months, hopefully in the month of January, but knowing me, it'll probably be like February or March before I film it. I have a lot of hype books on my shelf that I've been eyeing and considering for this vlog, and I'm gonna list some contenders, and if there's any that you're like, oh my gosh, you need to do like a second follow-up video for this, then you should DM me over on my Bookstagram and tell me that I should do follow-up videos and which ones. The reason I say DM me my Bookstagram instead of comment on my YouTube is because I don't check YouTube comments much, if ever, because the most vile comments, the most vile hate comments in particular I've ever gotten online was on YouTube. So yeah, I don't know why. I've known that YouTube is notorious for trolls for the longest time, and then I started my YouTube channel and I was like, okay, who are the most vile people? I mean, there's such a great community on here. There's so many great comments, but when you get a hate comment, they're really bad. So some ones that I've been eyeing on my shelf that may work for a sequel for this, or that I may read as my third book for this video, is The Priory of the Orange Tree, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, Carry On. If you see me look to the side, it's because I'm looking at my bookshelf. The Lost Hero, After by Anna Todd, The Cruel Prince, and Allie Hazelwood. I'm just putting Allie Hazelwood on there as like a general because I know I have one of her books, but I can't see it on my shelf with where I'm sitting, and I don't remember which Allie Hazelwood book I have off the top of my head. It's definitely not The Love Hypothesis. I remember that. I remember that was the one I wanted to read the most, but then I ended up getting one from like Costco, and it wasn't The Love Hypothesis. It was just one by Allie Hazelwood because I wanted to give her a try. I wish that I could tell you which one it was. I want to say maybe it was the one that's like the 3 novellas together. I'm not sure. Anyways, those are the ones that I'm considering, but I also have a ton of other hype books on my shelf, and I'm a mood reader. So whatever hype book I read next will just be one that I spontaneously choose. So today is going to be the 3rd book in this hyped books reading vlog, and my cat is out of control today. I think I chose one that I didn't list. I think I chose one that I didn't actually list off last time in hyped books that I might choose for this vlog. And I chose this one because I feel like it's fitting to read while I'm taking Spanish courses, and also because the author is going to be at a Comic-Con that I'm going to go to later this year. My cat is like aggressively attacking her scratching post. Bro! Anyways, the book that I chose is Mexican Gothic. This is by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So this one isn't the most hyped book I've ever seen, but it does have a lot of hype surrounding it, especially on BookTok, which by the time that this video gets uploaded, BookTok may be no longer in existence because of the TikTok ban. So I know that this one is a horror. I don't know that much else about it. I mainly got it because of the hype and because this cover's so pretty. And I was flipping through it like to stick my bookmark in, and I need to show you the pretty stuff that's in this edition as well. So this is stunning. It's giving like classic horror movie vibes, and then across from the title page there's just this that I think is really pretty. I think this one is historical fiction and it takes place in Mexico. So let me read the back off really quickly. It does say from the author of Gods of Jade and Shadow, and that is actually where I first heard about this particular author, but I ended up picking up Mexican Gothic first. But Gods of Jade and Shadow is on my list of stuff to watch. She is at the other side of my window. Oh my god. She just knocked everything off my desk. She said, "Let's make this the most chaotic filming session possible." Okay, now I'm actually gonna read the back. From the author of Gods of Jade and Shadow comes a reimagining of the classic Gothic horror novel, a story about an isolated mansion in 1950s Mexico and the brave social elite drawn to its treacherous secrets. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin, Noemi Taboada heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. Noemi is an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, more suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing, but she's also tough, smart, and not afraid. Not of her cousin's new English husband, a stranger who is both menacing and alluring, not of his father, the ancient patriarch, who seems fascinated by Noemi, and not even of the house itself, which begins to invade Noemi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Noemi's only ally in this inhospitable place is the family's youngest son, but he too may be hiding a dark secret. As Noemi begins to unearth the stories of violence and madness, she's slowly drawn into a terrifying yet seductive world, a world that may be impossible to escape. Where it says the dreams with visions of blood and doom, I feel like there could be a fantasy element in here, but I'm not 100% sure. I've mainly heard this one hyped as like a gothic horror, so I'm very much looking forward to reading this one, and I'm very excited to let all of you know what I think about this one. It is the same month that I filmed my clip for the Inheritance games, so I am so on top of my game this year so far. But I'm looking forward to getting into this one, and I will update you when I am at the halfway mark. So when I'm about like right here or so, I'll come back with an update. So I reached the halfway point in Mexican Gothic, and I'm not a fan. I had such high hopes for this book, in part because of the hype surrounding it and because of this beautiful cover, and it just is falling really flat for me. I knew I wouldn't like it after I read the first few paragraphs of this book, and now things could change. I still have like the second half of the book to read. Let's see, the second half is right there. I have finished 14 chapters, which is about halfway, like page number wise. I don't know how many chapters there are actual number wise. It's 27 chapters, so pretty much as close as I can get. to the halfway point. So there's two major problems with this book for me. The first one is the pacing, and you know, when I started reading this book, I was like, this writing style really doesn't vibe with me, it doesn't work with me. And I think that with writing styles, there's a way to be active and engaging and descriptive, but not feel sort of passive and boring. And I feel like the writing in this book is more passive and boring, which is making me think I might not like this author's other books, so I might take her other books off of my want to read shelf. I don't have any physically, but one thing that I'm going to for sure do is, where is it? There's the like excerpt from one of her books, Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I know that one was the one that was like on my list before Mexican Gothic, so I'm definitely going to read that excerpt and like give it a chance if it sounds good in the excerpt. Yeah, the writing style isn't working for me, and the pacing is so slow, mostly because of the writing style and because not a lot is happening. I mean, stuff is happening, but it's very few and far between, and the action scenes are very small. And then my other big problem with this book is I hate Noemi. She is spoiled and entitled and just so infuriating. I can't stand her at all. And honestly, because of Noemi, because of the slow pacing, I'm like, are people lying about what they think about this book? Like, why does this book have such huge hype surrounding it? Maybe I'm just not used to horrors that are really slow and not scary and not at all interesting. Like, is that a subgenre of horror? It's definitely gothic horror. And the thing is, this one, because it's gothic horror, reminds me a lot of Crimson Peak, which is a movie that has Tom Hiddleston in it. The main gal's name is Mia. I don't remember her last name off the top of my head, but she's another incredible actress. So like, Crimson Peak is a movie that I enjoyed. I would have enjoyed it more if there wasn't incest in there. But something about Crimson Peak just felt more engaging and interesting and less boring. And I feel like to some extent I'm predicting the plot a little bit because of Crimson Peak, but also I could be totally wrong and it could just be vibes. I get the sense this far into the book that Virgil is grooming Noemi, and I have seen a spoiler for sexual assault in here, and now that thing is complicated to me. And the thing is, towards the first like third of the book, there's a sexual assault scene, but it happens in a dream, but these dreams you can't tell if they're real or actually dreams, and it's more than sexual assault, it's full-on rape. And it's complicated because it's like, is she dreaming this, or did she actually have that happen to her? You know? And I'm not the biggest fan of that. Like, a lot of things I'm like, oh, it's fine if we don't know whether this is actually happening or not happening because it's supposed to be mysterious and supposed to be like sort of fantasy elements. But with this, I'm like, no, we need to know whether she is a victim of rape or not. Like, you can't leave this as just this mysterious, like, oh, it was probably just a dream, I don't know, but also it's the most descriptive thing in this entire book so far. The one thing that I'm liking about this book so far is Francis. I find him to be a sweetheart, but also it seems like there's a lot of inbreeding with this family, and it seems like this family is cursed, or the house is making the family cursed, so I feel like things won't turn out well with him in the long run, but he is a bit of a sweetheart. He is the one saving grace for this book. So I have one more chapter that I'm going to try and read tonight to reach my goal of 50 pages, because I aim for 50 pages every day at a minimum. I'm having a hard time finding the motivation to pick up this book and read it because it is so boring, and maybe I just need to go read some like 1 and 2 star reviews of this book to make me feel less alone in my thoughts on this book, because literally everyone I know has only talked positive things about it. Love that. So yeah, I'm gonna go read some more and I'll be back in a couple days, probably like 2 or 3 days, when I have finished this book, and I'll let you know my thoughts on it. I'm really hoping that when I come back for another clip, like the final clip, I'm hoping that the book will have taken a turn for the better and that I will be enjoying it. But as of right now, not a fan and really hating it. So tonight I finished Mexican Gothic and I have some thoughts. I would say that it only got better at the last 50 pages of this book, but by that point there wasn't that much saving it, so I did end up disliking it, but it ended up being a 2-star read. Where do I even start with where I left off with my last update? God, I don't even know where to start. Maybe let's start with some triggering stuff. Maybe that will get us somewhere. There is sexual assault in very graphic detail, which I didn't like how the sexual assault was portrayed, because they played into this idea that she has some like morbid desire involved in it, which I really don't like that idea, and the idea of even posing that a victim may be into it is something that's just disgusting and shouldn't be in here. There's lots of incest. Yeah, a lot more incest. That was something. Yeah. There was body horror in here. The body horror was gross, but it was also probably one of the most interesting parts for me to read about, just because I didn't like this very much. I thought there was a lot of like scientific research put into how this specific body horror would come into play. I'm not gonna say what the specific body horror is because I don't want to like spoil the plot twist for everyone, but you find out within the last like maybe 60 pages, and it does make the story a lot more bleak and dark, which I thought was interesting because it makes it seem like at several points like this one won't have a happy ending. And I was actually surprised about the ending, and I think the ending actually is part of the reason too why I'm giving it 2 stars instead of 1 star. So Francis was the only saving grace for this book with me. He's a sweetheart, and he proves that no matter how bad your roots are, you can become a good person and you can be a hero in someone's story, because truthfully he is the hero of this story. He is the only reason why any sort of good things happened at the end of this story. I really enjoyed him as a character, and I think it's interesting because he's a character that normally I would be like grossed out by and not that interested in because of his family's like heritage. That sounds bad. Because of like the incest heritage, okay? That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like a race or anything. But I did actually really enjoy him. He's a sweetheart. And I know that the book described him as like ugly, but I pictured Thomas Sangster. Thomas Brody Sangster is who I pictured while I was reading this book. And if it ever gets made into like a movie or TV show, I know that they probably will make all of the cast appear more beautiful than what they were described in the book. So I wouldn't be surprised if like him or someone looking like him gets cast, because that's really who I pictured as Francis. And I said earlier that I was gonna read the little, where is it? The excerpt at the end. And I did read the excerpt of Gods of Jade and Shadow, and after reading that, I just really don't think Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing style is for me. It's very slow paced, and it just has this weird quality to it where the writing feels more like passive and less active, I guess, and which it just doesn't really work for me. I think it works for some people, not really for me, so I just unadded all of Silvia Moreno Garcia's books off of my Goodreads Want to Read shelf. This was luckily the only one I owned. One thing that made me really happy though is that I like connected the dots and like figured something out, which is there's an interview with Silvia Moreno Garcia in here, and someone asked what are some of the sources of inspiration for this novel, and as I was reading this I was like, I bet she was inspired by the yellow wallpaper, and she was, and I think that's really cool that I was able to like connect the dots and see the similarities. However, one thing about it that made me sad was, so this book talks a lot about eugenics, and apparently the author of the yellow wallpaper was a eugenics advocate. And in case you don't know what eugenics is, it's basically wanting it to breed with people of certain qualities to produce the best heirs and the best children and the best future generations. And it also involves like sterilizing some people you deem not worthy of having kids, and there's a lot of like racism shoved into eugenics. So it's a terrible idea, a terrible concept that is really discriminatory, and it's disappointing that the author of the yellow wallpaper was an advocate for that, because I do like the yellow wallpaper. Yeah, I thought it was cool that I was able to connect the dots between this and the yellow wallpaper. There's also some essays in here that Silvia Moreno Garcia wrote, and reading the essays, they're very like academic sounding. Like, I mean, it feels like you're reading an essay for school and less for like enjoyment, and what I want out of books is enjoyment and less feeling like I'm reading like an essay. And so I think her writing style, even non-fiction wise, just doesn't work for me. Honestly, I think those are my major thoughts about this book. I can see how it would work for some people. It doesn't really work for me. I don't understand the hype about it. I'm sort of disappointed that I'm finishing this vlog off with a book that I don't like, but oh well, it is what it is. To recap the vlog, I started off with Throne of Glass, which I gave 4 stars, and then I slowly worked the star rating down, I guess, because then I went to the Inheritance Games, which I gave 3 stars, and I finished off with Mexican Gothic, which I of course gave 2 stars. If you enjoyed this vlog, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me. If you haven't already, I recently hit 500 subscribers, and I'm so grateful for all of you who are here as a part of my subscriber family. I'm going to start filming my next reading vlog very, very soon, which is going to be really exciting. I've already picked out my first book for that vlog. Look at me being on top of things this year. I'm going to be doing a new to me authors vlog, which basically means that I am going to be reading 3 books by authors that I haven't read before. The authors may be really popular, they may be ones that you have never heard of before, but they're all going to be authors who are completely new to me. So it's going to be seeing if I vibe with these authors, if I vibe with their writing styles, and if I think that they may become a new favorite author. I have a thriller book picked out as my first book for that vlog, which is shocking that I'm doing that, but I want an arc of it and it sounds like an interesting read, so I'm really excited to start filming that vlog soon. I try and upload at least one video every week, and I upload videos on my shorts on here all the time, so feel free to stick around for other fun, nerdy, and bookish content, and if you want to see my cosplays, they will be over on my shorts. I highly recommend following me on my other social media as well, especially if you're into books, because I have bookish social media. I should stop rambling now. I have some schoolwork to go to. I need to go con crunch a little bit because I have a con this upcoming weekend. But anyways, I hope all of you are having a great day, and I will see all of you in my next video. Until next time, goodbye.